Mount Everest. The ultimate dream for climbers, yet one of the deadliest places on Earth. Over 300 lives have been lost on its unforgiving slopes, where ambition meets nature's raw power. But some tragedies stand out, not just for their heartbreak, but for how they reshaped the way we climb forever. Today, we'll explore 6 of the most tragic deaths on Everest, stories of courage, missteps, and sacrifice that left a lasting mark on climbing history. These are not just tales of loss, but lessons etched into the icy face of the world's tallest mountain. From the haunting story of the Sleeping Beauty to the viral chaos of the 2019 traffic jam, each account reveals the thin line between glory and disaster. As we ascend into these chilling tales, ask yourself, how far would you go to stand on top of the world? Francys Arsentiev, The Sleeping Beauty, 1998. Francys Arsentiev's story, known as the Sleeping Beauty Tragedy, is one of Everest's most haunting tales, a story of ambition, love, and devastating loss. In May 1998, Francys set out with her husband, Sergei Arsentiev, to achieve a dream that few dared to attempt: to become the first American woman to summit Everest without supplemental oxygen. Their journey was not just about reaching the top. It was about pushing human limits and leaving a mark on history. Francys and Sergei were experienced climbers who had conquered numerous peaks together. Their bond was as strong as their shared determination. During that spring, their path to Everest was the Tibetan side, marked by difficult conditions and technical climbs. Without bottled oxygen, every step above 8,000 meters, the death zone, was a battle against the body's limits. They tried to reach the summit twice, but equipment problems and exhaustion stopped them. They kept trying. On May 22, 1998, Francys and Sergei finally reached the summit. It was a triumph of willpower over adversity. But their victory came dangerously late, leaving them to descend in darkness. Exhausted and oxygen-deprived, they became separated during their descent. Sergei returned to camp the next morning but realized Francys hadn't arrived. Without hesitation, he grabbed oxygen and supplies and returned to find her. Meanwhile, Francys was discovered by a Uzbek climbing team near the summit. She was alive but barely conscious, her body ravaged by frostbite and oxygen deprivation. The team tried to help her, giving her oxygen and attempting to move her down the mountain. But their resources were limited, and they were forced to leave her behind when they could go no further. As they descended, they encountered Sergei climbing back up with supplies for his wife. That was the last time anyone saw him alive. Francys spent another night alone in the death zone. The next morning, climbers found her sitting upright in the snow, her face frozen in a peaceful expression that earned her the nickname Sleeping Beauty. Her body remained on Everest for years, becoming a grim reminder of the risks climbers face. Sergei's body was later discovered lower on the mountain. It's believed he fell while trying to save her. The aftermath of their tragedy sparked widespread reflection in the climbing community. Francys's death highlighted the extreme dangers of climbing without supplemental oxygen and the ethical dilemmas faced by climbers who encounter others in distress at such high altitudes. Some questioned whether more could have been done to save her. Others argued that survival in the death zone often comes down to personal decisions. Years later, climbers moved Francys's body off the main trail out of respect for her memory and those who passed by. Her story remains one of Everest's most poignant tragedies, a tale of love and sacrifice that remains beloved by people worldwide. As we reflect on this heartbreaking story, we are reminded that dreams often come with risks, and sometimes those risks lead to devastating loss. Francys Arsentiev reached the top of the world but paid the ultimate price for it. Her legacy is both inspiring and cautionary. If this story moved you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Next up, we dive into the viral chaos of the 2019 Everest Traffic Jam, where hundreds of climbers fought for survival in the death zone. Why did the world's most iconic peak turn into a lethal bottleneck? And what does it reveal about the price of ambition? Traffic Jam Tragedy, 2019. The year 2019 saw a dramatic illustration of Everest perils when overcrowding near the summit turned a challenging climb into a deadly traffic jam. The events of that climbing season not only resulted in multiple fatalities but also sparked a global conversation about the ethics, safety, and commercialization of Everest expeditions. The roots of this tragedy run deep, intertwined with the growing accessibility of Everest and the increasing number of climbers, many with limited experience, seeking to conquer the world's highest peak. Commercial climbing companies have long provided guided Everest expeditions, including equipment, Sherpa support, and logistical help. While this has opened Everest to a broader range of climbers, it has also led to an influx of inexperienced individuals who may underestimate the mountain's dangers. By 2019, the Nepalese government had issued a record number of permits, leading to overcrowding at various points along the climbing routes, particularly in the death zone, above 8,000 meters. The infamous traffic jam occurred on May 22, 2019, with clear weather that typically draws a surge of climbers aiming for the summit. As climbers ascended, they encountered bottlenecks at key points, including the Hillary Step, a near-vertical rock face just below the summit. Due to congested fixed ropes, climbers were forced to wait for hours in the frigid temperatures and thin air of death zone. For many, this delay proved fatal. Reports and images from that day painted a harrowing picture. Climbers exhausted, oxygen tanks depleted, and bodies strewn along the route. The viral photograph of a long queue of climbers waiting to ascend near the summit became a symbol of the crisis, a stark contrast to the romanticized image of Everest as a pristine wilderness. The exact number of deaths attributed to the overcrowding is still debated, but at least 11 climbers lost their lives that season, several directly linked to the traffic jam. The aftermath of the 2019 Everest tragedy ignited a storm of criticism. Seasoned mountaineers and experts questioned the Nepalese government's permit policies, arguing that issuing too many permits without adequate regulation endangered climbers. There were also calls for stricter screening processes to ensure climbers met the required experience and fitness levels. Commercial operators faced scrutiny for prioritizing profits over safety and not adequately managing their clients. In response, the Nepalese government vowed to review its permit policies, consider limiting the number of permits issued, and strengthen regulations for climbing operators. The 2019 tragedy ignited a significant ethical discussion about Everest within the climbing community. Climbers debated whether summiting at all costs was justifiable and whether personal glory had overshadowed the importance of teamwork and mutual support. The 2019 Everest Traffic Jam is a chilling reminder of the complex challenges facing the world's highest peak. It underscores the need for responsible climbing practices, ethical business operations, and thoughtful government policies that value safety and preservation over commercial interests. Everest is not just a mountain to be conquered. It's a place that demands respect, humility, and a profound understanding of its inherent dangers. Finally, the tragic events of 2019 highlight the fine line between ambition and recklessness on Everest. Reflecting on these events, we must remember the human cost of summit fever and take steps to avoid repeating past errors. The 2019 Everest Traffic Jam serves as a somber reminder of the perils of overcrowding and the human cost of summit fever. It's a call for greater responsibility and respect for nature's power. Yet, the mountain holds even darker secrets. We're about to rewind the clock to 1996, when a sudden storm transformed Everest into a battleground, a day that would forever redefine high-altitude climbing. The 1996 Everest disaster. The 1996 Everest disaster remains one of the most infamous tragedies in mountaineering history, a harrowing tale of misjudgment, human endurance, and the unforgiving power of nature. On May 10th and 11th, a deadly storm struck near the summit, claiming the lives of 8 climbers and leaving a lasting scar on the climbing community. This catastrophe would forever change how the world viewed Everest and its commercialization. The events unfolded during what was supposed to be a triumphant season for 2 commercial expeditions: Adventure Consultants, led by Rob Hall, and Mountain Madness, led by Scott Fisher. Both were seasoned climbers with years of experience guiding clients to the summit. Their teams included climbers from around the globe, many of whom had dreamed of standing atop the world's highest peak for years. Among them were Doug Hansen, a postal worker attempting his second summit after turning back just short of the top in 1995, and Yasuko Namba, a Japanese climber determined to become the oldest woman to summit Everest at the time. The plan was straightforward: summit on May 10th and descend before afternoon storms. However, delays began early in the day. Bottlenecks formed at critical points like the Hillary Step, where climbers waited hours as fixed ropes were set up. The late start meant many climbers were still ascending well past the recommended turnaround time of 2 p.m. Despite this, some pressed on, driven by summit fever, the overwhelming desire to reach the top at any cost. By late afternoon, climbers began descending as weather conditions worsened. A massive blizzard swept the mountain, bringing whiteout conditions and hurricane-force winds. Visibility dropped to near zero, and temperatures plummeted. Climbers became disoriented, running out of oxygen and losing their way in the storm. Among those stranded high on the mountain was Rob Hall, who stayed behind with Doug Hansen after Hansen collapsed near the summit. Hall's final radio call to his pregnant wife back in New Zealand remains one of the most heart-wrenching moments of this tragedy. "Sleep well," he told her as frostbite and exhaustion overtook him. Scott Fisher, leader of the Mountain Madness team, died from exhaustion and altitude sickness during his descent. Yasuko Namba reached the summit but collapsed on her way down and was left behind by other climbers who believed her condition was beyond saving. Miraculously, Beck Weathers, another member of Hall's team who had been left for dead in the storm, managed to survive despite severe frostbite that would later cost him both hands and parts of his face. The aftermath of the disaster sent shockwaves through the climbing world. 8 climbers lost their lives over those 2 days, making it one of Everest's deadliest seasons at that time. Survivors like John Krakauer, who was part of Rob Hall's expedition on assignment for Outside magazine, chronicled their experiences in books like Into Thin Air, which became a bestseller and brought global attention to the risks and ethics of commercial climbing. The tragedy raised serious questions about overcrowding on Everest and whether inexperienced climbers should be allowed on such dangerous expeditions. Critics argued that commercial operators prioritized profits over safety by taking too many clients with limited skills into such perilous conditions. The disaster also highlighted gaps in communication and decision-making that proved fatal when combined with unpredictable weather. In response to this tragedy, climbing practices began to shift. Operators became more cautious about group sizes and turnaround times, while climbers were encouraged to better prepare for high-altitude conditions. However, even with these changes, Everest remains as dangerous as ever, a place where ambition often collides with nature's fury. The 1996 disaster is a sobering reminder that no amount of preparation can fully tame Everest's unpredictability. It's a story of human resilience, but also one of hubris, a cautionary tale for anyone who dares to challenge its icy heights. As we leave behind this chilling story, we move toward another tragedy that shook Everest's climbing community: David Sharp's lonely final hours near Green Boots Cave in 2006, a story that would reignite debates about ethics and humanity on the world's highest peak. Stay with us as we uncover this heartbreaking tale next. If you found this story compelling, please take a moment before going toward our next story to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories in future. David Sharp, 2006. David Sharp's story is a stark and controversial tragedy, revealing the brutal ethical choices climbers confront in Everest's death zone. In May 2006, David, a 34-year-old British mountaineer, embarked on his third attempt to summit Everest. Unlike most climbers who joined full-service expeditions with Sherpa support, David chose a minimalist approach. He booked a basic service package with Asian Trekking, which provided only logistical support up to advanced base camp. His plan was bold but risky, climbing solo without supplemental oxygen or a support team. David was no stranger to high-altitude climbing. He attempted Everest twice, in 2003 and 2004, but failed to reach the summit. Despite frostbite injuries from earlier climbs, he remained determined to conquer the mountain on his terms. Friends described him as quiet and introspective, someone who found personal fulfillment rather than glory. Before leaving for Everest in 2006, he told others, "If I don't do it this time, I'm not coming back." On May 13th, David began his summit push from the North Col. The details of his ascent are sparse since he was climbing alone and carried no radio or satellite phone. Some believe he may have reached the summit or come close before encountering difficulties during his descent. Exhausted and suffering from severe frostbite and oxygen deprivation, David sought refuge in Green Boots Cave, a small limestone alcove at 8,500 meters that already housed the frozen body of Sewang Palger from the 1996 disaster. Over the next 2 days, dozens of climbers passed by David as he lay huddled in the cave. Some assumed he was already dead. Others noticed signs of life but offered little help due to their limited oxygen and resources. A team of Turkish climbers reported seeing him alive but unresponsive early on May 15th. They attempted to assist him briefly but ultimately continued their ascent. Later that day, members of an expedition led by double amputee climber Mark Inglis also encountered David. Inglis later described how their Sherpas tried to revive him but concluded that it was too late to save him. David's final hours were marked by solitude and suffering in one of the harshest environments on Earth. He died alone in Green Boots Cave, his body joining Palger's as a grim landmark on Everest's northeast ridge. The aftermath of his death sparked outrage and debate within the climbing community and beyond. How could so many climbers walk past a dying man without help? Was it acceptable to prioritize personal goals over saving a life? Critics argued that David's decision to climb solo without supplemental oxygen or adequate support contributed to his fate. Others pointed fingers at the commercialization of Everest, where overcrowding and summit fever often overshadow basic human decency. The tragedy raised difficult questions about ethics in the death zone. Is it fair to expect climbers, already fighting for their survival, to risk their lives for others? David's story became a turning point in discussions about Everest's culture. Some operators began placing greater emphasis on teamwork and mutual responsibility during expeditions. However, even today, the mountain remains where ambition often outweighs compassion. As we reflect on David Sharp's lonely final hours, we're reminded that Everest is not just a test of physical endurance but also moral character. His story forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature in extreme circumstances. But David's tale is not the only one tied to Green Boots Cave. This story also connects to another tragedy, revealing the shared risks borne by both climbers and the Sherpas who make their climbs possible. As we descend from this tragic chapter in Everest's history, we move toward another haunting tale, that of Green Boots, the mysterious figure whose frozen body became an unintentional landmark on Everest's treacherous slopes. Stay with us as we uncover this chilling story next. Green Boots, Sewang Palger, 1996. The story of Green Boots, widely believed to be Indian climber Sewang Palger, is one of the most haunting and enduring symbols of Mount Everest's dangers. In May 1996, Palger was part of a 3-man team from the Indo-Tibetan Border Police, attempting to summit Everest via the challenging northeast ridge. Their mission was historic. They aimed to become the first Indian team to conquer Everest from that route. However, their ambition collided with the mountain's unforgiving nature, leaving a tragic legacy. The team began its ascent full of hope and determination. As they approached the summit on May 10, 1996, weather conditions rapidly deteriorated. One member wisely turned back, sensing the impending danger. Sewang Palger and his teammate Sewang Samanla, however, pressed on, determined to achieve their goal despite worsening visibility and freezing temperatures. By late afternoon, they had successfully reached the summit. It was a triumph for India, but it soon turned into heartbreak. On their descent, disaster struck. A fierce blizzard engulfed the mountain, bringing hurricane-force winds and plummeting temperatures. The two climbers became separated in the chaos and disoriented in the death zone, where oxygen levels are critically low. Palger sought shelter in a small limestone cave at 8,500 meters, 27,900 feet, but his body could no longer endure the extreme conditions. Alone and exposed to the elements, he succumbed to hypothermia. Palger's bright green mountaineering boots became his defining feature, earning him the nickname Green Boots. For years, his body remained in that cave along the northeast ridge, becoming an unintentional landmark for climbers attempting to summit Everest from that route. Many climbers paused briefly at Green Boots' cave to rest or adjust their gear, a grim reminder of how close life and death coexist on Everest. Green Boots raised unsettling questions about ethics and priorities in high-altitude climbing. Climbers often passed by his body without stopping to pay respects or attempt recovery, partly due to the logistical challenges of retrieving bodies at such altitudes and partly because of the relentless pursuit of personal goals. His story became a symbol of summit fever, the overwhelming drive to reach the top at any cost, and sparked debates within the climbing community about whether ambition had overshadowed humanity on Everest. In 2014, reports emerged that Green Boots' body had been removed from its resting place, likely by Chinese authorities overseeing expeditions on the Tibetan side of Everest. While this brought closure for some, it also erased a physical reminder of Everest's darker side, a place where dreams often come with devastating consequences. The story of Green Boots reminds us that even in moments of triumph, nature can humble us in the blink of an eye. It highlights the delicate balance between ambition and survival on Everest's icy slopes. Even as climbers strive for glory on Everest, Green Boots' legacy remains a powerful reminder to respect the mountain's power and the value of human life. Next, we'll explore the devastating Khumbu Icefall avalanche of 2014, which claimed the lives of 16 Sherpas and exposed the dangers they face daily on Everest. The Khumbu Icefall avalanche, 2014. The Khumbu Icefall, a constantly shifting glacier riddled with deep crevasses and towering ice blocks, has long been one of the most dangerous sections of the Everest climb. For the Sherpas, who cross it multiple times each season to prepare routes for paying climbers, it represents not simply a challenge, but a constant life-threatening risk. On April 18, 2014, this danger became devastatingly real when a massive serac, a towering block of glacial ice, collapsed, triggering an avalanche that swept through the icefall. 16 Sherpas lost their lives in what was, at the time, the deadliest single incident in Everest's history. That morning, at 6:45 a.m., Sherpas were making their way through the Khumbu Icefall, carrying heavy loads of equipment to higher camps in preparation for the climbing season. They were delayed by poor climbing conditions earlier in the day, which placed them directly in the path of disaster. Without warning, a massive chunk of ice, a serac, broke away from Everest's western shoulder. It plummeted into the icefall, setting off a devastating avalanche that swept away everything in its path. 13 bodies were recovered within 2 days. 3 others remain entombed beneath layers of ice and snow to this day. The tragedy caused widespread shock within the mountaineering community and devastated Nepal's Sherpa population. These men were not climbers chasing personal glory, they were workers risking their lives to support foreign climbers' ambitions. Among the victims were fathers, sons, and husbands whose families depended on their income for survival. The loss was felt deeply in the Khumbu region, where Sherpa culture is intertwined with Everest's climbing history. The aftermath of the avalanche revealed long-standing issues. The Nepalese government offered compensation of just $400 per family for funeral costs, sparking outrage among Sherpas and their supporters. Many Sherpas demanded better insurance coverage, increased pay, and safer working conditions. They also called for greater recognition of their contributions to Everest expeditions. In solidarity with the fallen, Sherpas collectively decided to halt all climbing operations for the remainder of 2014, a rare and powerful act of protest. The tragedy reignited debates about the ethics of Everest expeditions. Critics highlighted that while climbers pay tens of thousands of dollars to attempt the summit, Sherpas bear most of the risk for a fraction of the reward. Everest's commercialization has turned it into a high-stakes sector where profit frequently comes before safety. The 2014 incident forced climbers and operators to face these hard realities. In response to mounting pressure, some changes were implemented in subsequent years. Insurance coverage for Sherpas was increased, and new safety measures were introduced to reduce the risks of the icefall. However, many argue that these steps are not enough. The Khumbu Icefall is still extremely perilous. Even minor errors in judgment can have disastrous results. The 2014 avalanche serves as a sobering reminder of the human cost behind every successful Everest expedition. It underscores the risks of high-altitude climbing and the heavy price paid by its support staff. For many Sherpas, climbing is not a choice but a necessity, a way to provide for their families despite the risks. As we conclude this journey through 6 tragic stories on Everest that changed climbing forever, one thing becomes clear: ambition must be balanced with respect for nature's power and human life. These stories offer enduring lessons in courage, sacrifice, and responsibility. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey through Everest's history. If you found these stories meaningful or thought-provoking, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more explorations into human resilience and adventure. What are your thoughts on balancing ambition with safety? Let us know in the comments below. And remember, no summit is worth more than a life.